There we go. Okay, boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning into a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this evening with Student Minister Abel Muhammad. He's going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration. First of all, on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience, Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, dear brother.
Yes, sir. This means a lot to us, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. The first question that we have for you is, when did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
I was in high school. I was introduced to them by a brother who was, I think, a year or two ahead of me in high school. And it was kind of by accident. He had a pile of newspapers on his on the study hall desk, where it was like the lunchroom, but when there was no lunch, we would sit there and supposed to do our homework or whatever. And he had a big stack of newspapers with the final call. I'd never seen them before. And the cover of it said "Treatment for AIDS Found in Africa." And I remember, because at that time it was like AIDS was a big thing. It had just started and people weren't sure what it was and everything, and it was a lot of people were dying. And I remember my first thought was, that can't be true, because I would have heard about it on the news. And I said, what is that? Let me see it. And so I started looking through it, and he told me it was $1 for it, so I gave him $1. And I remember I was just fascinated by reading the article. And I never was a big reader, but I really was fascinated by everything I saw in there. And it just kind of pricked my mind a little bit. A few weeks later, we were sitting in the same study hall, and he was reading this book. Matter of fact, it was a soft cover, but it was this one, How to Eat to Live, book 1. And so he had it like this on the table on top of his papers. And this is the part that jumped out at me. I remember I looked over it. I went, "From God in Person." I said, "What's that? What are you reading over there?" He's like, "It's a book we have on our diet." I didn't know what he was talking about. I never asked him his religion or nothing like that. So I didn't know what he was talking about. He's like, "But it's a book." I said, "Well, can I see it?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, but you got to give it back." And I was like, I'm not going to keep your book. I'm not a reader like that. So I just wanted to literally, look through it. But I ended up keeping it overnight, and I read it overnight. And everything that the Honorable Elijah, what fascinated me was the picture, because he looked like an Asian man to me. And then it said, "From God in Person." And I never seen any book say it was from God in person. Even the Bible, I had been trying to read the Bible, and it didn't say anywhere on there "from God in person." So I was very fascinated. And when I read it, it just resonated with me. All the words that I didn't know who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was. I didn't know what the nation was. I didn't know who Minister Farrakhan really was at that time. Even though I'd heard him in some of the music I was listening to, I didn't know who he was. I just heard a voice in a lot of these songs. And I read the whole book in literally like 1 or 2 nights. And for whatever reason, I just started practicing what the book said. Said to eat a certain way, stop eating other things. I haven't eaten pork since that day back in high school. And and I can't explain why exactly. The language was so simple. Everything was just so logical that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying. And I tried it. He said, if you eat less, you'll feel better, you'll feel healthier, you'll have more energy. And it was true. I started eating 1 meal a day in high school. At first I went to 3 meals, like he said, then 2, then 1. And everything he said would happen. I could sleep 3 or 4 hours a night, wake up with no problem. When that used to be the biggest trial for me, was waking up in the morning to get to school on time. My grades went up. I felt like I could remember things faster. And it was all because just reading the book. I still had never heard the minister, but I was blessed that later that year, I started listening to tapes of Minister Farrakhan. And all the questions I had from reading the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's books, the minister answered in the first lecture that I heard from him on a cassette tape. And I just knew, even though I'd never gone to the mosque, I didn't know what a mosque was. I started practicing from what I understood of it, until finally 2 or 3 years later in 1994, I finally attended the mosque for myself, because I was blessed to attend high school with the granddaughter of Minister Farrakhan. I didn't really know what that meant at the time. And she would just keep encouraging me, you should just go to the mosque. You should just go to the mosque. And so a couple of years later, I finally went, and I showed up. It was in February of 1994. And that day, Student Minister Rasul Muhammad was the guest speaker on a Wednesday night. It was snow outside and everything. And I took a bus all the way across the city to get to the mosque, never been in a part of town before. And he's from Mexico. Of course, he's the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Brother Rasul, and Minister Ishmael Muhammad, who's also the son, the national assistant to Minister Farrakhan, but son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He introduced his brother, Brother Rasul, that day. And of course, both of them were raised in Mexico. And I remember hearing what they taught, and it was like, yeah, this is what I've been looking for. I really went there that day to become a member because I'd already fallen in love with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I'd already heard the minister. But when I heard that and I saw that they were from Mexico, it just was like Allah was confirming. I didn't even know who was speaking that night. I just know that they said on a Wednesday night you should go and hear, or a Sunday. So I was a Wednesday night. I didn't have nothing to do, so I went and I accepted that night. And I remember they both, Minister Rasul, when I went up to shake his hand, he asked me where I was from, and I told him Mexico. He said, "Oh, what part?" And then he shared a few words with me in Spanish. So that was my journey really to becoming a Muslim. It still took me, after I accepted, it took me 4 years to get registered. So I didn't register till January of 98. And my first trip to the mosque was in February of 94. And really the reason that I delayed was because I wasn't sure I was ready for that kind of commitment. You know, it's one thing when you're reading books at home and you you in your mind say, oh yeah, this is what I want. And then you see it in practice and the discipline that it takes and the work that's related, that really, as original people, we've never had that kind of accountability before. We've never had that kind of self-imposed and discipline that it also requires you to fulfill duties to others. And I saw it and I said, okay, I don't want to play with this. Let me take my time. And 4 years later, I finally got registered. You know, part of it was I wasn't sure if, as a Mexican, this is where I should be. There were one or two other Mexican brothers, but they were both gone by the time I came into the ranks that I had seen before in Chicago. But when I got here, by the time I started processing, they weren't around anymore. I later connected with them and brought them back a little bit for a time period, but they didn't stick around very long, either of them. But by Allah's grace, I was able to, you know, really just learn all I could. And Allah blessed me to be surrounded when I first joined the mosque by a lieutenant who spoke Spanish and had lived some time in Venezuela, or Colombia. I forgot which of the countries he was in, but he spent time in Latin America and was very comfortable speaking Spanish. So he was the one who taught me how to go out and sell the Final Call newspaper, how to hold posts, and he spoke Spanish. But he was a Black brother, I think originally from Detroit, or he was living in Detroit, moved to Chicago, and works with Brother Warren, who works with the Final Call staff and crew, video crew now. Brother's fluent in Spanish, and that's I was blessed that when I made a decision, even though I didn't know what it meant, every time I made a step towards Allah, he just confirmed, yeah, you're in the right place. I got you. I know where you're going. And that was really my step. And what really made me become a Muslim was seeing the brothers, you know, seeing the FOI, that discipline, that seeing it in person. I'd never seen any people like that before. So even though the teaching was magnificent, to see that word flesh in human beings that the world had told us were, you know, savage and violent and you know, uncivilized, to see the level of civilization made me fall in love and say, that's what I want to be.
All praises due to Allah. Excellent. Okay, we got so many questions for you, and thank everyone in the comments. My sister Miriam, sister Naima, sister Trinesh, both, everybody saying Assalamu alaikum. Brother Nelson Ramos, always checking in from Massachusetts, says Assalamu alaikum, your Puerto Rican Muslim brother, and thank you people for showing love all across the country. Excellent. First of all, I didn't know Brother Warren spoke Spanish. I never knew.
Oh yeah. He's excellent at it. He's excellent at it. His I can't remember if it was Colombia or Venezuela. I think he spent 6 months there living before he for some time frame. So his Spanish, he's got the accent and everything. He's probably a little rustier now that he's been back here, but at that time he was fresh, and he was working in the Mexican community as his job. So he was interacting. And I remember one of the first times we went soldiering, he said, let's go up to Pilsen. That's the Mexican community. Let's go soldier up there. And we did. We walked in there. So he showed me, not just told me go soldier, he showed me this is how you do it. So we wouldn't just go on corners. We'd go walking through the neighborhood. And it really meant a lot, because it's one thing for somebody to tell you to do something, but when you don't know how to do that, you really need somebody to show you, and who has enough love for the mission and the minister and the cause of Islam, that I don't want you to guess at this. I'll show you how you do it. And that was the blessing that I got in my Al-Fatiha training, or when we were first converts, to have that kind of brother that had that kind of love and that kind of level of skill, where he actually knew how to deal with people in Spanish to some degree or another, and kept encouraging me to go and do that, because he wanted to do that and he was working at a community already.
All praises due to Allah. What do you say to someone who speaks Spanish when you're soldiering?
You know, and it's interesting. Today we just did our first all Spanish class, teaching the brothers. Every Sunday we're teaching them for the next couple of weeks how to get conversational Spanish, so you can talk with people when you're out soldiering with them. It's really just making a connection. So generally, we've gotten donations many times from people who don't even speak English, so they can't read the paper. So they're giving you a donation based on your presentation and really the spirit that you're conveying to them, because most of them are Christians, but they won't even ask you if you're a Muslim or not. They may just ask you, ¿Qué andan haciendo? Meaning, what are you all doing? What is it that you're doing here? And you'll offer them the paper, and they'll generally say, well, I can't even read it. And then we'll say, well, take it with you and give it to somebody in your house. If you have children, let them read it, or they read it to you. Thank you. And they'll take it. Sometimes we've been out and somebody will just see us, and they've never seen black and brown and red men in particular, cleaned up, looking decent, and they'll just honk the horn of their car, come over. I had one time a Puerto Rican brother, we were out soldiering, and he's like, how many papers you all got? 20 here. How much is, boom, here's $40. Give them out to everybody. We've had that happen often. Or one brother who'll just pull out, I can't read it. Oh, here, take it anyway, but here's $5. Here's at the grocery store or wherever, because they're really donating towards something that they see that they've never seen before, and they know whatever it is that you're doing, it looks good to me. They assume you're from a church or some religious organization because of our manner.
Yes, sir.
But they don't even ask most of the time, who are you? Sometimes they'll ask, who are you? I've had people, when I've spoken at events on behalf of the nation, literally they'll come up and give you money in your hand, because they said, whoever taught you, that they may not know the minister personally. They'll say it like this: whoever taught you has love and courage. And I've had that happen where, and Allah knows best, and $100 in your hand, $50, $20. I didn't ask for any money. They literally will come to shake your hand, and you know how grandma sometimes puts them. That's how they do it. That's how they do it. And
yes,
I was like, wow, look at that. That's going on my Savior's Day gift. You know, that's $100 towards that. And as to see that effect on people, all we're really trying to convey to them is the sense of brotherhood. So we'll talk to them about unity, about, you know, what we're out here trying to promote peace in the community. We're out here trying to help our young brothers and our young sisters, let them know that there's a better way. You know, would you take a paper to help us towards that cause? We're trying to educate ourselves better, and we're trying to also feed our families. We're trying to make a way for ourselves and for our people, and just giving them those basic principles. Some of them will say, oh, well, what are you? Or what church do you belong to? Well, we belong to we call it a mezquita, a mosque in Spanish. And they'll be like, oh, so you're Muslims, or in Spanish it's musulmanes. And like, yeah. Well, what do you all believe? They're really curious at first. Like most people don't even have an orientation. They know Allah, Muhammad, and that's about the end of it. But we don't look like the people that they're used to talking about Allah and Muhammad, especially because we speak Spanish. But our appearance in the nation is so different than Orthodox Muslims. They're generally very drawn, like, oh, well, you know, the sister, where are the women? They have questions like this from the propaganda that they've heard. They're like, well, we don't believe that. We're taught, you know, and we explain to them who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is. Usually there's one name we can say and all of them recognize, and that's Muhammad Ali. The minute we mention Muhammad Ali, they're like, those Muslims. Some may know a Malcolm X, but the majority, everybody in the world knows Muhammad Ali. Okay. And when you tell them that, they're instantly with you, right? Because he's loved all over the world for what he represented as the greatest in terms of boxing. And when they make that connection and they see you, they're like, then they start thinking, oh yeah, he did used to wear the bow tie. Oh yeah, he did used to have suits. Then they make the connection and they're like, oh, and they're kind of fascinated and drawn to it because they know we're not those Muslims that they're used to from over there. This is something different. And it really is a work of educating them, and trying to just make that connection to let them know that we're not against you. We're here to help whatever way we can in the community. And when they see the presentation, they can see, yeah, you all are different. You know, you kind of look like church people, but then you don't. You have a different manner about you, and they're willing to and they're fascinated. They're attracted, unalike, right? Unalike attract.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They're drawn to it, and they have questions. And even earlier this year when my father passed in January, he passed in January 31st. When we had his funeral in February, I hadn't seen, you know, especially because of COVID, hadn't seen many of my family members in about 2 years. So many of them came to the funeral. And even though it was real cold outside, early February, first week of February, Minister Ishmael came and he offered a prayer at the gravesite for my father. I shared words at the wake the day before. And when we were leaving, one of my uncles stopped me and said, okay, because they all know I'm a Muslim. But they were fascinated by us because the brothers showed up for my father's funeral and then the day before at the wake, and they had not seen black men like that, is what it is. And so they said, so what is it that you all believe? Do you all believe in the scriptures? Yes. Do you all believe in Jesus? Yeah, the Quran says Jesus, the son of Mary, is the Messiah. You all pray. You believe there's only one God? Yeah. Okay, then I'm fine with it. That's the response, because our being counters whatever propaganda they heard. He's looking at me with my family, with my children, with my daughters, well behaved, looking beautiful, looking civilized, and they're you know, they have minds. They're factoring. They're saying, well, hell, they look like good Christians. They're modest. They're clean. They're family. They're talking about God. It's resonating, the word. What is this then? What's the difference? And that really is the question. When the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that he's the Christ and we're the real Christians.
Come on with it.
We're really living that, you know, if we're holding on to the word. And that's the connection we're making. Is not just talking the word, but people seeing the word in flesh. They're drawn to it and they don't even know why. It's because they've been looking for somebody who's authentic. Not that we're perfect by any means, but sincere, trying to live the life. Man, it shows, and people are looking for something that they're like, gives them hope. And it's not words that give them hope. It's seeing that word put in action that gives them hope.
Oh, praises due to Allah. Okay, great. Some people in the comments saying that's beautiful. May Allah be pleased with your father. Presentation is key. Thank you, Sister Janice. Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, everybody who's in the comments and watching. Okay, my next question for you, sir, is what was it like the first time you met the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Oh man, the first time I believe I met him was in either 98 or 99. I just joined the mosque in 98, but I believe it was in the summer, late summer or so. Definitely it wasn't cold outside of 98 or 99. It was all of the ministers had been invited to Chicago, and all the laborers had been invited to Chicago from across the nation to meet with the minister. And I was blessed. It had to be probably the fall of 98. I had been blessed to enter into the ministry class at that time and invited to the ministry class. And I got invited to the meeting. And we were invited to eat dinner with the minister at the Salam restaurant. So I didn't even have a car back then. You know, I was a single brother I had a son at the time who was barely a year old or so, or 2 years old at the time. And I believe I rode over to the Salam with student minister Ishmael and brother Rasul, his brother at the time, because I didn't even have a ride over there. And like, you're coming to eat with the minister, right? I was like, of course I'm going to come eat with the minister if we're invited to. And so I was just happy to be in the building, you know, with all the ministers, over cities and stuff. But it happened that they sat me with them at the table. So I was sitting here. Mother Tinetta, I believe, was sitting. It was student minister Ishmael here. Mother Tinetta was sitting next to her son, and on the other side was brother Rasul. And the minister, we were right next to the minister's table, which I had no idea. And so when the minister comes in, he makes a beeline right for Mother Tinetta and greets her. And then, of course, he starts coming around the table to greet Minister Ishmael and brother Rasul. And I'm standing there, of course, I'm just super excited to be that close to him. And so Minister Ishmael introduces me to him. He goes, and who are you, brother? Mr. Ishmael introduced him. He says, this young brother who's in our ministry class, brother Abel. And he shakes my hand and he says, Brother Abel. He said, that's a beautiful name, brother. And he kind of just pauses, looking, he goes, I'm gonna try to get rid of Cain for you. And he gives a little smirk and he walks away. He does like and I was just standing, and they're all cracking up. And I was like, hey, did the minister just say a joke? Like, it was the farthest thing from my mind. I didn't know what to expect. I was just so nervous. And for him to just be so natural, and of course, later I thought about, man, that's a big statement he made. He's gonna try to get rid of Cain for me, especially knowing the history of Cain and Abel.
That's right.
I said, man, that's like protection for me. But at the time, it was just like he cracked the joke, like in my mind, it's like he was just being lighthearted a little bit, and we would say it. But that was the first time I got a chance to be close to him and just shake his hand. I never forget how soft his skin was when I shook his hand, and just the glow about him and how he just looked so beautiful. And then he went and sat down. And then the next time when I had a little bit more time to talk with him, actually, was about a year later, when he asked all of the ministers in the ministry class in Chicago to meet with. And that was only about 20 or 30 of us in the class. And we were in the Muhammad University of Islam. And he said, I didn't come here to speak. I came here to hear from you all. And I was like, I had only been in the mosque about a year at that point. And I'm like, oh man, what's about to happen here? And he said, I want you all to stand up and tell me why you want to be ministers. I didn't want to be a minister. I had got invited into the class, but I never had a desire to be a minister. I just wanted to help, and they invited me to the class, so I helped in that way. But I hadn't been on the rostrum really much. I had just started opening on some Wednesday nights and helping with processing, but I didn't consider myself, quote, in the ministry in that way.
Yes, sir.
But now I had to come up with an answer for the minister, because I wasn't going to tell him, well, I don't know, I don't want to be a minister. I'm just here. What am I going to say at this point? And so I was just honest. I said, well, I just want to help. And if this is how I can best help, this is what I'll do. And then he asked me where my family was from. This is how actually a conversation. He asked me where my family was from. And I said, they're from Mexico. He asked me what part. He asked me if I had been back. He asked me, how they responded to the teachings and me being a Muslim now. And I shared that with him. Then he told me, he said, brother, don't get bogged down with the black talk. He said, take the teachings and put them in a way so that your people understand them. And then really, that was the next time I met him, he said almost the same exact thing to me 2 or 3 times. So that was my real interaction with him, was him telling me and really giving me my assignment of putting the teachings in a way that our people can understand them, that are from the same background as me. But he was always so gracious. I never felt anything from him but love and his desire to help me. Even though I'm there thinking I'm going to help him, he's helping me all along the way so that I could be really a better servant for the cause that he's given his whole life for. So that was what I'm blessed to be in interaction with him.
Beautiful. All praises due to Allah. People are in the comments showing love from all across the country. Thank you all for showing love. My question is, that was my follow-up question. How did your family and friends feel about you accepting the teaching?
At first, my parents in particular, they kind of had not a difficult time, because I went from being a student with bad grades, not coming home, cutting school, and, getting into all kind of trouble. When I started calling myself a Muslim, I was at home. I was being more obedient. I was getting better grades. So it was doing for them what they didn't know how to do for me, or bring out of me. I would say it like that. They didn't know how to get this response from me, but the teachings was doing it. So even though they didn't understand, they kind of left me alone. They were like, look, he's respectful. He's helping around the house. We know where he's at. He's not out all hours of the night or something crazy. Now his grades are definitely improved. It made me the son that they wanted me to be. So it was very difficult for them to counter it or say, stop doing that. They didn't understand all of it, but the first adult conversations we had was because of the teachings. I would talk with them as I was reading and studying. You know how we love to learn things and share them with people. So as I was studying how to eat to live, I was telling my mom, they knew I was only eating one meal a day. They knew I wasn't eating pork. So they started changing the diet in the house, the restrictions. So and we'd have conversations about it, and they'd say, yeah, that's true. That's when I realized that the teachings were very practical. You didn't have to be like some super religious, spiritual person to understand them. just on the surface level, it was like these practical things that people already kind of talked about for generations, but it was tainted because it was, still from within the world, and we had our vices and things. But when I would say to them things about the pig, my dad, I'll never forget, he told me, he's like, yeah, when I was growing up, they would always say, in Spanish, he was telling me though, but he said, there's a word, puerco, which means like pork, literally the pig, but it also means like something dirty, again, like a pig, right? So it has this connotation and a denotation. And he said to me, when I was growing up, they would say that everything about the pig is business, and everything in business is puerco, or dirty, or like it's the pig, meaning that both ends, they literally like they commoditize from the rooter to the tutor, as they say with the pig. But also, once you get into business, everything is filthy, everything is corrupt, everything is crooked in that world of commercialization. And that's something he heard in the whatever it would have been, the 40s and 50s growing up. So it was interesting to see how there's the messenger, and what he was giving to us was so practical. Like he said, that you'd have to be a fool to disagree with it and not see the truth of it. And even little by little, by the time my father passed, there was no pork in the house anymore. They had grandchildren who were Muslim, who of course they loved, and they enjoyed seeing them. They stopped decorating the houses so much for Christmas and all of these kind of things, because the only reason they would do it was for the grandchildren, and they're not celebrating it. So they knew we were doing Savior's Day, so they'd come to the mosque for the different events at Muhammad University, when my daughter was in a play, when they were graduating. So they got to see the Muslims. Brother Regional Captain Dwayne knew my father from several times visiting. And even when my father had gotten sick, it was the MGT sent a beautiful plant to my mother, which he still has in the house. It's a beautiful plant. So that means something to people, and even when my father had gotten sick, he had a heart attack about 25 years ago now, when my wife and I first had gotten married, or right before we got married. She was the one, because my mom was still working at the time, that went to my father's house to care for him, because he was still in rehab. And when the nurse, because my mom didn't want him at home by himself, so it was my wife, and then my oldest daughter, but she was the only daughter at the time, they'd go over there. So there's a certain bond that happens, and they saw the care. My wife would cook for them when they weren't feeling well, make them navy bean soup and send it over there. So when you have that kind of like relationship, and you see people who, even if you don't understand or agree with everything they believe, you see their intent is to help, and to do it in a natural way with God-centeredness. If you're a natural, original person, it taps into your nature, and you start looking at it by the grace of Allah. Ultimately, even my siblings, my older brother started reading books on Malcolm X, and he's really become an activist in his own way, dealing with the pollution in the Mexican community. Because it was just came out a couple of months ago. The community of Pilsen, which is a Mexican neighborhood, is considered the most toxic, polluted community in the whole country. And that's where he used to live, and that's why so many people are sick there. So he's an engineer by profession, but he's going into the community, helping to clean up the land, because there's ways to decontaminate it, and they're trying to bring the people who contaminated in to say, hey, you should pay to get this cleaned up now. So, and that's, I think, I want to say that it's from his brush with this. He'd always had the inclination to do right, but he never read about Malcolm or Muhammad Ali, or even though we loved them growing up because they were just heroes. But it's different now. My older brother, I have two older brothers and an older sister. My older sister's an activist as well, always working in the community and doing things. So it's one of those things where Islam influences them. And this is really important, my grandmother, before she passed away, my mother's mother, this is many years ago, when she was getting older, some days in the summer I would stop by and visit her, and just to take her for a walk to see flowers, and just to spend time with her. And I was walking with her one day, and she shared with me, I never met my grandfather on my mother's side because he died when she was very young. He was killed in Mexico, and he was an orphan growing up because his parents were killed during the Mexican Revolution. And so he was an orphan. But my grandmother, shared with me that my mother's father, my grandfather, he was raised by Muslims in Mexico.
Mm.
And so I remember going, what? He's like, yeah, they were from Lebanon. And I went and did research. Yeah, there was a bunch of Lebanese people escaping war in Lebanon who fled to this and persecution. They fled to Mexico, and they adopted my grandfather. And then they were eventually killed, my grandmother said, because the people were jealous because they had a business and it was being successful. And the people, out of jealousy, killed them. So he actually lost two sets of parents before he lost his life. Because it was very tumultuous times in that time after the revolution. But I went home and I told my mother, I asked her, I said, why didn't you ever tell me that my grandfather was raised by Muslims? And she said, well, who told you that? I don't, what are you talking about? Nobody knew that. The only reason it came up was because I was the only Muslim grandchild member of our family. So it had never come up. My grandmother, by Allah's grace, shared it with me before she passed. And now the whole family knows, and I could tell it made a change in my mother. And she was like, and my other sister, who's the kind of like the historian for the family, she's collected all of the documentation for it. But it's interesting because it's like the imprint of Islam was already on the family to some degree or another. And my uncle Alfonso, who lives in Mexico still, you could tell that they try to do these things with their family. They do it within a Christian context, but it's very much trying to live the right life. And I always wonder, and I thank Allah, how much of an imprint that family from Lebanon left on my grandfather, that even though I never met him, from his daughter would be produced a son who loves Islam. So praise be to Allah. So they've all become much more familiar with it now that we have, I have more grandchildren than I think all my siblings put together, even though in terms of my children from my parents, we had four. I have four in total. We have four from all my other siblings. So I've matched them between me and my wife. So we definitely have a dominant presence of Islam now at the tables when we do things.
Beautiful. And people are saying, wow, praise to Allah. This is Miriam, Universal Teaching. This is Chanase. That's beautiful. Aziz Zakim. All praise to Allah. Thank you, everybody who continues to like, share, subscribe to the People's Podcast. Okay, my next question for you is Black and Brown unity. This is something that me growing up in Naperville, I saw that this was something that wasn't, the thing. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't always around. I'm sure in LA and other areas. What can we do to help better show love between the Black and the brown? Of course, the red too, but specifically.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It really is. The minister said, if we learn our history and learn something about one another's history, we would naturally unite. We would come together because we would see, and not to make light of it, but the new Black Panther movie, Wakanda Forever, it actually is very much about that and about the similarities. Once you know the history of one another, you can see the similarities of the history, and it can connect us better to one another. So it really is still rooted in the knowledge of self. The less we know about ourselves, we can't unite within ourselves, much less with somebody else. And that's on both sides of the equation. So most Mexicans don't know anything about their own history. And most Black people still, unfortunately, don't know truth about their history. So when you have ignorance meeting ignorance, that's never going to be a good outcome. Even in spite of that, we still manage to work things out in a lot of instances. So imagine once truth were introduced and we know who we really are towards individually and in relation to one another, there would be a natural unity that comes from it. We wouldn't have to work at it. The circumstances of knowing our history and knowing that we have the same enemy that put both of our people in this condition, our natural unity would be forged out of that. And that's why the enemy works so hard, so that we don't know who we are. We don't know who our brothers and sisters are. And really, it's at the cornerstone of the teachings that Master Fard Muhammad gave to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He opens by question number 3 of enrolling as a student in the classroom of God. He's giving to us the parameters of our work, the total population, who are those who are of us and who are those who are not of us in question number 4.
Correct.
But he's giving us numbers locally, nationally, internationally, or globally. And if you look at the numbers, 17 million with the 2 million Indians, he didn't count all of the original people. because there's a total of 4,400,000,000 all over. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
And that was back then when there was only 5 billion people or so on the planet. Now there's over 7 billion people on the planet, so those numbers have grown. But what is at the core of that teaching is the unity of the people. And I heard the minister say one day that when he spoke to in 2015, if you go back and look in June or July of that year, he spoke to the tribal youth gathering in DC. And I was blessed to be there with Sister Yonajda. And afterwards, we met with the minister and he asked us what we thought and what the people, how they received him. And if you look at the video, the young people loved the minister's words because they said they'd never heard an elder speak straight words to them before. They're used to elders being wish-washy and weak, really, this is what they were saying. And I told him, he said, what did I think? He asked me what I thought of the day and what the response and everything. And I told him, I said, I felt like a 16,000-year-old wound was being healed that day, referring to the 16,000-year exile history of what is called the red people being thrown out or made to leave the Holy Land for breaking the law of Islam. And he said, well, if what you're saying is right, then he said, then the work that Master Fard Muhammad came to do is being done, which is to unite the people again to themselves and to one another. So that lets us know how important the work is. He came to raise up first the black man, but in raising the black, he's raising the red and the brown, so-called, because they are natural brothers of one another, even though we're not in that condition today. So it's not by accident that as the black man has risen, you had the rise of, black nationalism. And then you had Pan-Africanism, and you really had pan-indigenousnism growing, where there was the unity of indigenous people throughout the Western Hemisphere. You had Black Panthers, and then you had the Young Lords and the Brown Berets.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You had this growth going, and people are not aware that even within the nation, there was growth. By the 50s and 60s, there were Mexicans in LA, in Texas. There was a representative to Mexico who spoke at 1964 Savior's Day, Brother Minister Manuel X Villalobos, who was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's minister to Mexico. So there were already these things happening, but the average person wasn't aware of them, even within the Nation of Islam, even though he spoke at Savior's Day, when you think about that. We take for granted in the modern context, everything the minister does is all over social media because of us. Back then, it was only in Muhammad Speaks. And whatever wasn't covered or you missed that month or that week when it came out, you were missing it. There wasn't the access to, we didn't have TikTok. There wasn't even CDs or tapes that could be given out in a normal fashion. So it had to be, you read the article and what the article covered. And if it wasn't covered in depth, then it wasn't, if it wasn't a photo, it really, you know how our people are, we weren't reading a bunch of articles anyway. Yes, we didn't know it existed. So now we're going back and looking at the archives, and you're finding articles from brothers in Colombia, brothers in Panama, brothers in Puerto Rico, brothers in Mexico, who were followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But we never called ourselves Mexican Muslims, Latino Muslims. We were just Muslims. We were followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And that also helped, in that sense, there was a unity amongst us, but the enemy broke that unity in the 70s by calling us disadvantaged, minorities. And now each of us went into our groups and we became divided, and we wanted our own title, our own brand, and it broke the unity. So we weren't happy just under the title Black. We weren't happy just under the title Muslim. We wanted to be acknowledged by our national name. It wasn't even enough to just be Latin American or Caribbean. No. I'm a Jamaican. I'm a El Salvadorian. I'm a Belizean. Whatever it was, like we wanted our flag, which is fine, but it was taking us from nation back to a tribe, really. And that's what these teachings do, is they detribalize us. They make us into a nation in spite of whatever tribe or ethnic, strain you come from. That's not where the power is. The power is in the root, and the root of all of us is God. And once we know that, all right, fine, you can have the branch. I want the root of the tree, not the leaf.
Oh, praise is due to Allah. Okay, great. If people are showing you love, thank you all saying yes. preach, teaching. Okay, we have a few more questions for you, Brother Student Minister.
Yes,
but we
sir.
have a quick 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. 1 second. Here we go. And we're coming right back. And please put your questions in the comment section. Thank you. We can't wait to put this on YouTube.
Brother Rashad Street Premier. He has a 4K camera and a drone. He does television and film editing. Please reach out to him if you need any of those services. Sister Miriam's ABC I Love Me, children's book and coloring book, and now Spanish book. All three available on Amazon.com. Sister Naima's Stay on Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country, right here in the studios of Atlanta, Georgia. Rock Communications. If you're working on a book and you need copy, editing, project management, content development, or media relations, please reach out to Rock Communications. Student Minister Robert L. Muhammad's Conflict Mediation, squashing the beast throughout the Southwest region. He does a phenomenal job. His wife, Sister Fudia Muhammad's Giving Birth to a God and the Science of Child Rearing. Please make sure you go out and get a copy of her book as well. Fashion Gods, urban streetwear clothing for men and boys. 314-329-6009. He'll keep you dressed in the best of fashion. Brother Kenneth's Bow Tie Maker Extraordinaire. He'll ship you bow ties anywhere across the nation. Taj Hollywood's Chemistry 6 episode, a new television series out on YouTube. He's looking for actors and writers. Make sure you support him. Keep It Hood, helping others overcome depression. Also by Taj Hollywood. Brother Aaron's Elevated Places, stress management, real estate, credit, repair, and restoration. His Respect for Life Center. They do personal wellness, philosophy, emotional, and mental spiritual wellness. 229-344-1474. Dr. Henry Carter's King Henry Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad's COVID-19 Disinfected Cleaning Services, out of Chicago. Student Minister Sharif Muhammad's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, available on adulsharif.com. And lastly, Brother Joshua Muhammad's book, Cleopatra, as well as No Father, No Excuse, both available on Amazon.
Thank you very much for all of the sponsors, and right back to Student Minister Abel Muhammad. And please extend the greetings to your family. And I want to thank you on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience for your sacrifice and the sacrifice of your family as well. We send nothing but positive energy and love to you all, and for the hard work that you continue to do. All praises due to Allah. Yes,
likewise,
sir.
Likewise, my brother. Your dad was my supreme captain when I came into the mosque here. And I gotta say this: your father was early in my first Savior's Day, 98, because I joined in January of 98. By February of 98, a Puerto Rican brother from Milwaukee, Brother David, who's the captain in Milwaukee, in the city of Milwaukee now, the student captain there, he came down and we went into your father's office as the supreme captain. And we asked him, the brothers were all going into the community for Savior's Day with the flyers, as we used to do to promote Savior's Day that year. And we told him there was a Puerto Rican brother who used to be a political prisoner who was going to be speaking at DePaul University. And we asked if we could go there to distribute the flyers and to meet him and to extend an invitation. Even though he'd be leaving the city, we wanted to make him aware of it. And he said, yes, absolutely. And you all go. Your father encouraged us so much. He goes, that's where you should be. So that the people, he goes, you all speak Spanish? Yes, go. He said, take the flyer. You got enough flyers? How many people you think are going to be there? And he was so excited. He goes, and one of these days, the next time we have a class with the minister, we got to have you all on post so the people can see the unity of you all holding post with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And to show you how Allah works, when we went, the brother's name who was the political prisoner was Rafael Cancel Miranda, who passed away just a few years ago during the COVID pandemic, or within the year before that, if not longer. When we got there, the brother had done, I don't know how many years in prison, at least 20, I believe. for trying to free Puerto Rico from the United States. When we got there, me and the brother, of course, we came suited and booted with the final call and flyers. Soon as we walked into this place at DePaul University, mostly white people, a lot of Puerto Ricans, but a lot of white people in there, he stopped. He goes, I got to say this. As soon as he saw us, he said, I love the Muslims. He said, I'll always love the Muslims. He said, because when I was in prison, they protected my life. Because the Muslim followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad recognized the unity that was present, and in their struggle to be independent, they found kinship with the Puerto Rican brothers, and they protected them in there because there wasn't a lot of them in there like that. And they say, I'll never forget, because he was almost in tears as he shared that. And he said it in front of the whole room of people and took the final call from us and asked us to give the final call to the people that were in attendance. So I'll never forget that.
All praise due to Allah. Excellent story. I can't wait to tell my dad that. And everybody in the comment is showing love. All praise due to Allah. I wanted to ask you, what are your parents' names, sir?
Maria and Francisco.
Beautiful. All praise due to Allah. Yes, sir. So we'll make sure that we know. So when people look back at the history, we can know where everybody came from. Beautiful. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. My next question for you is, in your time in Chicago and traveling throughout America and through the world, have you ever been faced with fear? And if so, how have you overcome that fear?
Yeah, there's a couple of times when you travel, you never know what you're going to meet, just on different levels. Honestly, the first time I really felt it, every time you speak, there's a level of, on the rostrum, there's a level of nervousness, maybe not fear, but nervousness at first. But it's nervousness mixed with fear in a good way, because you realize how critical that representation is, that when you're speaking from the rostrum, you have to make sure every word is correct, the spirit even of the word, because you could say the right word in the wrong way and it has a negative effect on people, and you're responsible for that now, and you're responsible to God for it ultimately. That's fear. That if you're in your right mind, that's something that gives a level of fear in you. So even to even to today, literally, we were right before Student Minister Jeffrey did the lecture today, we're in the back talking about how you still feel it every time before you mount the rostrum. And I probably one of the times that really sticks out to me is the first time I was sent out to speak in Phoenix. The Honorable Minister Min Farrakhan sent me out there to speak, to give a lecture. And I'll never forget the pressure of that, because I'd never been sent by him anywhere to speak before. So I tried not to think about it too much, because I didn't, all I could do was speculate, and I didn't see the point in that. But there was the fear of disappointing him. There was a fear, not that I was afraid. The word is perfect, so I just had to make sure I arrange it correctly. But I was afraid I'd disappoint him in some way and not say or do what would be helpful to him, and instead destructive. By Allah's grace, it worked out well. But that I even got sick literally going there. It was in December, and about 13 years ago now, and I literally was off the airplane. I spent 2 days or a day and a half in the hotel room, and they were just trying to get me to the point where I would be able to deliver the Sunday lecture, but I think it was here more than it was also manifesting physically, but I think it started here out of that level of fear of the pressure I was putting on myself, and also the real pressure of not wanting to disappoint him. Not that he put it on me, but I didn't want him to think that somehow I was not taking it serious, or that I somehow would, I don't know, in any way misrepresent or want to, or think lightly of it to not represent him properly. But by Allah's grace, it was an overwhelmingly successful turnout and delivery and reception by the people of the word. So by Allah's grace, it worked out. But that to me was one of the fearful moments. Probably the other fearful moments in traveling. I always feel good when you're with the FOI. So I don't ever have that kind of fear of like things happening, even if things may happen around me. Whenever I know that the brothers are with me, I don't, that's something. I can focus all my fear on the word and the one who is the author of the word. But most people don't understand that when you know that the brothers are with you. I've spoken outdoors in Dallas, at different venues in Texas, in California. I've never felt that like fear of something happening in me in that sense, because everywhere I've been, it's always the brothers with me. Even when here I've spoken, you know, I remember once here in Chicago during 2015, we were speaking everywhere. And they were having vigils for certain people who got killed in Humboldt Park. And they invited me to speak on behalf of the families, and the police were there. And I remember there was a moment, because the what do you call him, like the commander over the precinct, I forgot what his official title is. He was there, and they got their guns and everything. We're on the corner. And I remember thinking, a thought came to me to say something about, because I didn't like their presence there personally, because I already knew from the family that they weren't doing anything to try to solve the case. The family was telling me how they weren't returning their calls, and yet you show up at the vigil, which is not where we need you. We need you trying to find the killer of their child. And the mother telling me how they were really brushing her off. And I remember I was upset, and I remember thinking, should I say what I'm feeling? Not out of emotion, but out of like the spirit of protection for her and her family. Or do I not say anything because I don't know how they're going to respond? And there was quite a few police officers there. But I had two brothers with me. Brother Warren was with me that day too. As a matter of fact, my first lieutenant, he was with me up there. And there was a couple of us there. But I wasn't thinking in terms of number fighting, but it was just still that moment of, do I say what I know or believe is the right thing to say, or do I say safe what it should be said and avoid what could be a potential confrontation? And I remember I said a prayer, and I said what was on my heart to them. And I challenged them that if they really wanted to help, then they need to get rid of the corrupt police officers first. Because you can't ask the brothers in the street to be better than the law enforcement who are paid and sanctioned to do this. They are legally carrying arms and mistreating our people. How can I expect them to be the brothers on the street with no training, no nothing, to be better than you, who are supposed to be enforcing the law? And I remember the commander came up to me afterwards and thanked me for the words. So it showed me, Allah brought me ease, because I wasn't trying to make enemies for us or for the family.
Yes, sir.
And I even asked her, but I could tell I wanted to speak for the anger of the mother and not have her be the voice of that. Like, she's already, in my mind, she's already suffered enough. And I remember the thought that came to me was, I remember the minister telling us about one time he was speaking, and there was a white man with a gun on his hip who stood up and asked about, you all to believe the white man is the devil, or you teach that, something to that effect. That's right. He said he felt, and I felt it. I remember, and that's the thought that came to my mind. And then I remember he said, and then I challenged it.
That's right.
And I will never forget, because the police posture changed that day after we said what we said. And it wasn't, I knew it wasn't personally what I said. I knew it was because it was the truth. So truth was on our side. And I think that's where we sometimes get misconstrued. If we speak out of emotion, we're not going to win. But if emotion is fueling the truth, then it'll carry it further. It'll amplify it. But if we're speaking emotion because, out of just from the spirit of emotion, it's not going to have the right effect. And that's what I think the minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, is the perfect example of it. He's so passionate at times. That's right. But it's never at the sacrificing of the truth. He just fuels the truth with his passion and his spirit of whatever emotion he's feeling. And he does balance it too. He doesn't speak sometimes just out of emotion, or if the emotion is out of control. And I knew I didn't have that, but I did feel that fear of like, man, I don't know what'll happen if I say this. And I thought about the minister, and of course, I tried to follow his example. And if we follow his example, we'll never be the losers.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excellent. And people showing love all across the country.
Praise be to Allah.
My next question for you, sir, is there's a picture that people were sharing of you with the great Assata Shakur. How did that take place?
Man, that was in 1995. In the summer of 95, I was blessed to go to Cuba with a group called IFCO, Pastors for Peace, who they work and have been working for years now to end the U.S. blockade against Cuba that doesn't allow them to get medical or school supplies even into the country, and a lot of basic things. And I was blessed to go there after traveling across the country and Canada. And I went there and we were blessed to have a meeting with our sister and talk with her for a whole afternoon. I had her phone number for years. I wouldn't call it, but but I was blessed to have it in case I ever went back there, you know. And she was just such a wonderful sister. In the picture, there's a necklace that I ended up giving to her that was made by the Zapatistas in Mexico, in Chiapas, who in the January of 94 of 94 had started a rebellion in Chiapas, the southern part of Mexico, from the indigenous people to throw out some of the colonizers. And they're the ones who were wearing the ski masks and stuff down there. And they had made these leather necklaces, basically, right, with different symbolism on it. And I had it and I gave it to her as a gift, and she loved it because I told her where it was from and what it represented, and she wore it and took it with her that day, and we were blessed to take a picture with her. But she was so giving of her time and explaining things to us about her experience, about how she got there, about what she thought we should be doing as young people. And really, I fell in love in Cuba and wanted to stay there. And the only reason I came back is because I wanted to go to the Million Man March that would be happening later in the year. Otherwise, I might have stayed living in Cuba, because you don't have the amenities, mind you. There were rolling blackouts. There were times when you wouldn't have lights, no hot water, but you're in the Caribbean, so you don't need a whole lot of hot water. But it was difficult to, like, you don't have AC because all of the lights go out and you don't know when they're going to go out. There were scheduled blackouts, and then there were unscheduled blackouts. So they're really suffering, you know. Everything was old. Like you see in the movies, the cars are all old, the buildings are old, but the people were so beautiful. To see like people who really love one another, you know, who really are like, hey, we're in this together. We went and we worked while I was down there at this factory. You know, those water at like an office, the water thing when you have a little paper cup and you get your little drink of water, water cooler, right?
Yes, sir.
So you get those little paper cups. Well, they don't even have paper cups there. So what they would do is they would take like sheets of paper, you know, like almost like just a regular sheet of paper, something like this, right? But it was a little bit thicker, like a little browner, like a brown paper bag material. And they showed you how to fold it in such a way where it would make a cup that was like a little cone. And you would make it, because that's what they had to use as drinking water cups, because they couldn't import cups even without. So we went and worked for in a factory, and everybody, we found out from the community, whether you were a doctor, whether you were a teacher, a certain amount of hours each year, you go and you work, and they tell you at the end of the day, you didn't get paid because it's a socialist country. So they're not giving you a paycheck. What they're saying is, you made, you know, whatever, 200 cups for the revolution today. You did this for the revolution today. So I forgot how many cups I made that day, but I sat there and I folded them, and I was like, man, look at this. I'm sitting here with a teacher. I met a sister who was a doctor, because they got so many doctors. She was a doctor, but she was working as a security guard in one of the museums. But she's an actual doctor, like a medical doctor, but they have too many doctors. So they asked her, we know you're qualified, but for the revolution, will you take this position? Because that's what we need right now. And she did. They're so humble. They're so beautiful. It was one of the most amazing experiences, and the icing and the cherry on top was just meeting Sister Assata. And she's like everything you would hope she is, you know, from reading her books and knowing her history. So passionate, so loving, so caring, but a fighter and a warrior. And depending, you saw it in some of her answers, her passion and her love for her people. But she had a tremendous, tremendous amount of love for the Cuban people, for our people still here in the States. And she was very concerned about the direction, even at that time, that our young people were going and how they were being influenced. And we really see it today. What she was afraid of is that there was a growing sentiment of like self-centeredness, of being about like the exterior only and individual, and not about the collective. And she said that that's something she was afraid that she saw coming, and we see it really, the enemy has tapped into that in a big way, and is manifesting today, some generation later now, 20 some odd years later.
Oh, praise you. So excellent. Okay, and we see all of the comments. Our people are going to make a way. Thank you very much. Amen. Follow guidance. Beautiful. Okay, now I need to go back to this for a minute. So to help me understand, So in Chicago, you got, this is before Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff, but you had VCRs, video games, screens, and new cars at public,
right?
And you willing to give all that up to drink out of a paper cup?
Yeah.
Help me understand.
I'm gonna tell you, it was because I saw the people free. I mean, I got to visit the schools, I got to visit the hospitals, and what they didn't have in amenities, right? In these things, man, I saw you didn't need it. You didn't really need it. There was a connection. We would go out at 2 and 3 in the morning and just walk down to the ocean front in Havana. No homeless people, no obese people. I didn't see one obese person while I was there. No homeless people. You couldn't go into a restaurant. You didn't have a big menu at home because food was rationed, because it's an island. They couldn't even produce enough for everything they needed. So there was a set amount that each family was given, and you had to make it work. They ate a lot of the green beans, the green peas, the little round circular peas, whatever they're called. That's what they would make. Kind of like Mexicans eat beans. They would eat the green beans like this and smash them up and do all kind of stuff with them. They didn't eat meat every week or every day. They gave us some as guests, but they ate very simple, very basic. But there was something about the camaraderie, man, to see people like willing to be like, yeah, we don't have the TV, but we have each other, and we have our dignity and our independence. So what we have is ours. We're not in debt to other people, and we're willing to sacrifice for it. And to know that they value, this is what I thought was interesting. When I went there, Fidel Castro was still alive and the president. There was not one picture of Fidel in public. Now, if you go there, he's everywhere because now he's passed. But the pictures you saw in Cuba were of all of those who died during the revolution. So you had pictures of Che Guevara, Cienfuegos, all of these names of these great revolutionaries of theirs. That's what you didn't see advertisements for Coca-Cola. It was all advertisement for the revolution and the martyrs, or the soldiers who gave their life in the revolution, so that the people were constantly reminded of it. I was there during an election, and they had, I believe, 99% participation in the elections. They had literally like a town hall forum, not two parties. There's only one party, but there were like 20 candidates running for what would be like your alderman seat. And literally, it wasn't no Rush TV, debate. No, in the town square, the people sit and ask them questions all day before they decide who they're going to go vote on. And then the people go out and vote. And then the people, I think they had 90 or 95% literacy. Everybody reads, everybody knows, everybody, at least, even if you're just going to be like a farmer or work the land, you still got a high school diploma at least. So these people were taught, they were reading newspapers about world events, and I'm looking at them like, man, this is what is life, not stuff. You don't need the stuff. You need one another. You need to be able to know what's happening and have control over yourself, and then try to help people. That's why they were producing doctors. They didn't want to export something commercial, some sort of product. Their export to the world was healing through medicine. And I was like, man, so then it made sense that later that year when the minister went, he mentioned how Cuba was a sign of the Good Samaritan and a sign of the kingdom of God for us to study, even though they're non-religious, quote unquote, because they're socialists. But he said he saw more good being practiced there than in so-called Christian and Muslim countries. So it's something for us to look at. And that's what I fell in love with there too. I saw people, brother, and it's mostly Black people. That's the other thing people have to understand. It's mostly Black people there. Just beautiful though, brother. Literally, you know that principle, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, if you have a bowl of soup, half of it belongs to your brother. They live that. They literally live that. And to see people live that way, it's changed since then, since I was there a little bit, because there's more Western influence there now, and Fidel is gone, and they're chipping away at it, but it's still pretty strong considering. But brother, I wanted to just stay there because for the first time in my life, I felt peace there. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I didn't know a lot of people, but I got to know them. You know, I made lifelong friends there because It's something about they knew what we were risking by going there, because we could in theory be arrested for coming back once we went there, because it was illegal for us to travel there. And we took medical supplies, we took school supplies, we took solar panels for a school down there. We took, I think, 2 or 3 school buses down there that we took through Canada. They saw us. I mean, they felt that. They're like, man, you're risking something to come here and do this. So there was an instant affinity built with them for that. They never, and you saw they would never undermine that or devalue that by making it some cheap thing like it was a publicity stunt. No, they knew that there was real consequences to this if the government decided to enforce it on us. They hopefully wouldn't, because we were going there as pastors for peace, but they knew that they at any time potentially could throw us in jail, fine us, all of that stuff. And they showed us the utmost respect and care and love. And it wasn't just us as externally coming there. I saw them practicing that amongst themselves. That's what you usually don't see. I saw them practicing that there, and man, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to stay. I had a friend who stayed and got married down there. That's how much like love is naturally there, because the people are enlightened and they're educated and they're cared for. Free schooling, free healthcare. Your needs are taken care of. Now, if you want stuff, that's not the place for you.
Absolutely.
But if you know what I mean? For real. Yeah. Like if you want a hot bath every day, that's not the place for you.
Okay.
If you want a big screen TV, that's not the place for you. But if what you're looking for is peace of mind and to disconnect from this world, I've never experienced, and not to say that there's not other places. I personally have never experienced another place outside of Cuba that is that.
That's beautiful. Okay, praise be to Allah. And do you plan on going back anytime? You have plan to go back?
Inshallah. You know, my daughter, I went when I was 20 years old, and my daughter turned 20. She went this year too. She went with the same group that took me down there. So she was down there and got a chance to meet the current president, and she's an artist. So she gave him some of her, gave him some artwork that she had prepared for the trip down there. So inshallah, we'll see. I might go in the next year or two again, but I would love to go. But it's been so long. I'm curious what it looks like now. I know there's been changes because Fidel's not there anymore, but I would love to see for myself what it's like now. I know from her experience, there's a lot more Western influence there now, more social media and things there. So that's having a negative effect on the psyche of the people. But I'd like to see it for myself just to see how much of the change, since I have something to compare it to.
Beautiful. All praises to Allah. We just have a few more questions, but thank everybody who's watching. The trial. What has been the greatest trial in your life, and how have you overcome that trial?
That's a good one. I don't know, the greatest trial, you know, because I gotta be honest, to be blessed. Not that I haven't had trials. We're tried every year.
Yes, sir.
But it seems like to me, at least personally, once I'm through a trial, it's hard for me to like reattach to them. They're kind of like lost, you know. Like it was difficult when I'll give you an example. When my father passed, it was difficult, as you would imagine, when you lose a parent. But it happened so beautiful, and I was blessed to be literally at his side the moment that he passed. Literally saying prayer, holding his hand when he passed, and he went so peacefully that I didn't even know he had passed. How do you? I mean, I don't have any like negative to hold on to in that moment. It was difficult for sure, but even looking back on it, I'm like, all I can think about is how blessed I was that Allah let it be in such a peaceful manner. And when I look at all my trials, I'm like, yeah, that was hard, but it was like, it seems so far ago now that I can't even like touch it any, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have any power with me anymore. But probably that the passing of my father, and I'm trying to think of what the other one would be. Because there's being married, having children, each one of those brings its own set of trials, but they're like I said, they're like beautiful trials. So in the moment it's a trial, but once you get past it, it's like, yeah, that was nothing. You know what I mean? You kind of have this feeling of it. We've dealt with, poverty. We've dealt with loss of like we're told we're gonna do. So it's not like a surprise. But probably, honestly, the most difficult trials for me have been when like my wife has suffered or had to endure things with our children, whether it was birth, and to see her in pain and you can't do anything about it. See those are difficult, because I got nothing and no one to do but to call on Allah.
Yes, sir. Let's stay right there. I'm glad you brought that up. The delivery room, man to man, once again. Why do you go in there?
For me, just because I wanted to be her support for it,
Okay.
you know, to be her support, because it's ours, right? It's me and her, and we were blessed. You know, she had to actually, for all three of our daughters, she had cesarean sections. So if you've never experienced that before, it's very traumatic. And as a husband, there's nothing you can do. You can't do anything for the baby. You can't do. So to see her like that, that's why I understand when the minister says we have to value our mothers who go through that for us. And as men, any woman who births a child for you, man, there's nothing. If you bought them a house, that don't equal what she went through for that. That's the least, just to try to come close. Now, it cheapens it to think that you could buy something to equal what she's going to. You know, the minister said they go through the pain of death for it. So to see her in that state and then come out of it, I mean, it's really, when you think on it, it's like, man, it really makes you feel like, oh, so unworthy. What could I offer to her? And then it puts you even thinking about your own mother. What could I offer to her to thank her that she went through that so that I could be here? There literally is nothing too good that you could give her, you know, and so that's why it's really, and it makes me understand why the prophet, peace be upon him, said that the best of you is those who are good to your mothers and your wives.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It makes perfect sense, because honestly, brother, that's a debt no man can. There's nothing you could do with it. All you can try to do is now take care of her and the children that she bore for you at the very least. But that's it. Really, the more I think about it, brother, just thinking back on those moments, because it's been my youngest daughter is going to be 10 at the end of this month. So it's been a while since we've been in that position. But as a male, to see a woman suffer that for you, you know what I'm saying? It's very humbling, because you know you're not worthy of that. And she really is her and Allah. Only Allah could get her through that. So it forces you to rely on Allah, because you can't do anything for her. So you got to ask Allah, please help her. Please help her, because I can't do anything. I'm not a doctor. Even if I was, there's not much a doctor can do for them in that condition. And all we can do, but you're there really. I felt like I had to be there to at least support her, to hold her hand, to make sure she didn't feel, she's got to be feeling fear. Hell, I'm feeling afraid in there. So just to try to be that support, that moral support for her. You know, we're blessed nowadays. They may let another person, like a mother or somebody else in, another friend. And Allah has blessed us at each situation where we have MGT who are nurses, who are doctors, who they'll show up. They'll show up when we need to. So by Allah's grace, we've been blessed, even with members of the minister's family, to be in the hospital, I was about to say hotel room, the hospital room with us, or you know, we see them in passing because they work in the hospital, and that just always brings at least some assurance to your heart, like, okay, you're not alone here. So if something were to happen, you know where to call. But by Allah's grace, all of them were healthy, and all of them are, you know, growing up, and my wife is, you know, recovering. But I can imagine that for a woman, it takes longer to recover. The physical pain they'll recover from quickly, but I'm sure that what they endure, if me visually can still remember it and it triggers something in me, I could only imagine for a woman to have the experience that. That's why I think that's why it's so severe, the response to when a man mistreats a woman is severe in our community, because man, to mistreat your mother who went through that for you, or your wife who's going through that so that you can be continued in the future, man, there's a problem, and we got
yes sir. Beautiful teaching. And people like Usman Ray Kente. Thank you everybody who's all across the country. We have 3 more questions for you, sir. Sure. What is your favorite album of all time?
That's a good one. I used to listen to it. Changed over the years. When I was younger, I would always listen to Public Enemy.
Okay. Okay.
You know, when I was coming out of high school and first getting into the teachings. Now I still will listen from time to time, but it's more out of nostalgia, you know, not because I'm getting into the. I still love it, and it reminds me of something, but it's not something that I like want to feed from anymore. Unless I want to get into a certain mode, like of work or something, you know, going outside and I'm doing something physical and it gets me a little bit amped. But there's an album by this brother who's a rapper named Brother Ali. And I think it's called My Own Light. I think that's the name of the album. But it's a beautiful album with calligraphy on it. I know that's one of the songs on the album. I just can't remember if that's the name of the album or not. Let me make sure I give you the right name of it.
Yes,
but it's a beautiful album, and it doesn't have any cussing on it. And it's one of the few things I can listen to during Ramadan.
Okay.
That's why I like it a lot, to be honest with you. It's called All the Beauty in This Whole Life. That's the name of the album, All the Beauty in This Whole Life by Brother Ali. And I was blessed to introduce him to the minister. He's actually an albino brother, but he's very spiritual and loves the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, loves the minister. And the minister kept referring to him as Imam. And even though he's a rapper, and interesting, now the brother's studying to be an Imam, because he said he always felt like somehow the minister picked that up. That's how we know he's a man. But that album, brother, it touches me because it's lyrically very beautiful, but it's also strong. It's got some like different types of music on it.
Yes, sir.
But it's something in this stage of my life right now where I feel comfortable listening to it, because I can listen to it with my children. I could listen to it on my own, depending on the mood. I can go to different songs on there. Some of them are a little rougher, but there's one curse word bleeped out in one song. But he purposely made like a clean album. He was trying to, because of his studying, he was in a different place.
Yes, sir.
And that album, brother, just is kind of like the soundtrack to where I am right now, where I'm starting to see all the beauty and everything. It came out a couple of years ago. I think 3 years ago the album came out, but it's something that I own on vinyl, because I got a record player upstairs, and I also listen to it on the Apple, the iPhone, on the Apple Tunes, iTunes. But the brother, I know him personally. He's a beautiful brother, but the music on it just moves me, because he's talking about Allah in every song, but with skill and lyrics, and it just. So, a matter of fact, I'm just by accident, I'm wearing his shirt right now for. from one of his, I just realized it now looking down at it. But I love the music on it, because it touches something in me that makes me, every time I hear it, it like motivates me, like, okay, I got to do better. And that to me is like the stage of my life where I want to be able to do better, and I want to feed from that, which makes me continue to feed that desire to be better, and not just a tangent. I listen to other stuff too, but in terms of stuff that is like on constant repeat for this stage of my life, is that one. If you would have asked me 5 or 6 years ago, it probably would have been something by when I was in Cuba, it was Tupac. That's all I would listen to. In 95 was Tupac. And then probably 10, 15 years ago, it would have been Mos Def. I was listening to a lot of Mos. They were just different stages in my life.
Yes,
and now, even though I love Golden Child, I listen to him all day. I listen to Brother Danique out of New York, Nilam, our sister Akila Nianda down in Texas as well. I love listening to all, but they don't necessarily always produce albums. You know what I mean? I like their music though a lot, but their brother, this was like a real album where it was like songs and you could just listen to it without skipping tracks. That to me is what makes a great album. And that album, I could just listen to it. And like I said, even during Ramadan, it's one of the few things I could listen to, because I'm trying not to get distracted, in particular in that month. But I would prescribe that to all the brothers who like lyrics, and but you want something a little different to feed on your spiritual side. That brother, that album to me is like, his masterpiece, even though he's still making music. And made quite a few albums before that. That album to me is like the masterpiece that I heard from him. And it just, in the last, like I said, COVID, that constantly, weekly, I was feeding and listening to that album. Still, I haven't been listening to as much music lately, just because of time wise. But when I do, I usually have at least one or two of those songs from that album that come into my playlist.
Beautiful. All praises due to Allah. Okay, our last two questions. Thank you, Brother Kente. Thank you, everybody who's continuing to watch. My sisters, Tranisha, Mimi, Naima, everyone who's in the comments. Beautiful. And people, we can't wait to put this on YouTube tonight. Please let us know where you all are watching from and your thoughts for Student Minister Abel Muhammad. Excellent. Speaking of student ministry, being around the Most Minister Farrakhan and his presence since 1998, growing, watching him grow, but then having your own individual journey and growing, what do you plan to do in his absence? And what advice do you give to us to keep, spiritually connected when we been around him, people like myself our whole life and people we watch him. Mm-hmm. Now he's saying he's leaving. From a ministerial standpoint, what advice do you give to us about what we should do, and what do you plan on doing as far as holding on to your faith?
Yeah, he told us to keep doing what we're doing and do it more, increase it. And that's what I've really been getting into the mode of right now, is trying to do more while he's here. Because I think if we try to start when he's gone, it'll be that much harder. Because it's kind of like, if there's a scripture that says, work while there's day and while there's light, for the hour cometh which no man can work. It's hard to start working in the dark if you're not used to working at all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think we got to start working now, and then hopefully we'll have the habit of working and some expertise, or at least some training and conditioning in working, so that when he's gone, we just continue it. I think to try to begin once he's gone, we've made the gradient for making that a reality much more difficult than it has to be. And I would just encourage us to keep him at the center of all we do. I remember the Christians used to have this thing, what would Jesus do? They were on bracelets and shirts and all kind of stuff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And literally every time I speak, I ask myself, what would the minister say? And the only way we can honestly answer that is if we're feeding from him and studying his word and listening to him over and over again. Otherwise, there is no mystery, God. It's not going to all of a sudden just fall out of the sky. The minister's not imagining what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would say. He's reaching back into what the words that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said are, and then they're coming to the forefront in certain situations, in certain contexts. If we're not feeding from his word, we don't have that to pull on. And so then we're going to lean on our own understanding and potentially make some very, very dire mistakes when he's gone. It says in the scripture that we would defeat the dragon and the beast by the testimony, which means what we say, what we live even, right? That's the testimony of who the Christ is, and our bearing witness in our lives of who he is. So it's the testimony that we give that defeats the dragon. Well, what kind of testament are we giving? It can't be that I'm waiting for him to leave. No, that's not how this works. You got to start the work now, and then we continue and increase it. And then I think it puts us in the position. It's prophesied that we'll defeat the beast. But it's also prophesied he takes down a third of the stars with his tail.
That's right.
So which side do you want to be on? The side that gets taken down or the side that wins? And we got to always be examining ourselves. And that's, like I said, that's the mode I'm in right now, is not ever thinking that I got it figured out, because the moment we do that, Student Minister Ishmael is reminded us so often, it's the blow you don't see coming that puts you out. If you knew it was coming, you're practicing for it, that's easy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But it's interesting, Allah never tries us like that. It's like you ready for this one thing. I'm ready for this trial. I'm not going to be tried by poverty. Okay. How about I try your health? Well, I'm not going to be tried by, I'm eating one meal a day. Oh, okay. How about I try you with loss of a loved one? How about I try you with losing your job or getting put out of where you start? He can come from any angle.
That's the truth.
And so what we got to do then is, we're not preparing for just a fight. We're preparing from the fight, no matter where it comes from. So each of us is going to be tried in a different way. What Allah knows what I need to be tried with. He knows what Brother Joshua needs to be tried with. So our trials won't look the same. That's why we can't judge other people and say, man, I don't understand what the big deal is. That should be easy for him. No, that would be easy for you. That's not why you're not being tried with that. They're being tried with that because Allah knows what they need. Brother Ishmael, I got to share this with you. He gave us this analogy one day, or this comparison. He said, It's like playing poker. I don't want to make it cheap like that, but he said, you don't always need a flush to win sometimes a pair will win your hand.
That's right.
Equality and justice is that Allah gives you what you need to win your hand in life. Somebody may need a royal flush. Somebody else could win with a straight. Hell, they could win with a pair of twos. That's all they needed for their hand. That doesn't make one better, one worse. Did you get what you needed to win? That's what we need to look at and stop. When we start comparing things, it's never going to be just, because your life and my life aren't the same. There's different circumstances. There's different things that we're going to have to go through. It doesn't make one greater or lesser. Allah's just. He's going to give you what you need.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We just have to look at it and say, dang, okay, why did that one get this and I didn't get it? You obviously are not going to need that. But they will, and maybe without it, they have no chance of making it. And if we thought better of one another and were more supportive instead of judging the situation, we would be better off. And that's, I think, what we need to remove from ourselves is the judgment and instead be supportive. That's what real brothers do. That's what real sisters do. It's not for me to figure out why this is hard for you. If you tell me it's hard, it's my job as your brother to be there, be like, man, brother, what can I do to help you? Not say, man, what's the big deal? I had that happen to me and I did this and this. Well, damn, yeah, I don't have those resources, or I didn't think about that. Well, thanks for sharing that. Maybe I'll try that now too, instead of judging them and making them think that there's something wrong with them because they don't know how to deal with the situation. Maybe Allah brought the situation so they could come to you and you already went through it, and now you can give them a way to solve it, instead of judging them and saying, why didn't you just do this? What's the big deal? Obviously a big deal. Allah put it in our way. Allah is using it to grow something in us. That's why being judges is such a dangerous thing for us, because it makes us potentially put ourselves in a position as a judge. And that puts us in a dangerous position with Allah, because He is the only one worthy and qualified to judge us. And to misjudge something and be in opposition to His judgment now puts us in opposition to Him. And that's a dangerous position to be in the day of judgment where He's present. So that would be what I encourage us to do, is just stay on that straight path of self-improvement. There's nothing fancy. There's no magic tricks. There's no like, man, if you just say this prayer at 3:53, you're gonna make it. No. If you do what we were asked to do and continue to do it, continue to hear his minister Farrakhan.
That's right. That's right.
To follow his guidance, we'll be all right. But the moment we stop and say, well, I got to figure this thing out for myself. All right, you can if you want to. If we each could figure it out, what do we need a guide for? If each one of us can figure this thing out, why is Allah got to make one man suffer for 6 decades for us? Another man for 4 and 5 decades for us? God himself come just so we could figure it out on our own? That don't make sense, man. And it happens, I think, because we become frustrated and impatient. And that's going to be a big trial for many of us. Can we just hold on? I heard the minister say one day, I was blessed to talk with him. I believe it was when we were leaving Charlotte for the Day of Atonement one year, when we were in Charlotte.
Yes, sir.
He was asking me about the response of the people, what I'd heard from his words the day before, because we were at the airport. And when I told him what had happened, he said, this is his words. He said, I've got to do more. This is Minister Farrakhan saying he's got to do more after 6 decades of working tirelessly. And something I said to him made him say, I've got to work more. And I said to him, but brother minister, you already do so much, but I could do more, he said. And because of the situation I had told him about of some young people who didn't come, he goes, I could have been there. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, if he could do more, I know I gotta do more. If he's saying he could do more with all that he does, it's an almost inhuman, it's a supernatural pace that he's on. But he's saying he's got to increase. That to me was a sign that you definitely have more that you've got to do. If he more than twice your age working, he's been working more than longer than I've been alive.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I'm like, how do I navigate that Yeah, all right, maybe he can. I guess he knows better than me that he could do more, but I know for sure I definitely can do more. And that's the thing I think we need to take up on our shoulders, is not just waiting for the minister to always do anything, but when he gives us instructions, following them and then having the discipline to stay on them. That's one thing I always love about your father. He doesn't let the instruction fall.
Oh, praise
the minister says 10,000 fearless. Guess what? 10,000 fearless it is. The minister says he wants us to start, economics, to start farming, to start figuring out a way to put food in our, step in the neighborhoods and end. That's what he does. We need to take that spirit on more, because that's what's missing. We don't need people who try to brainstorm on solutions. He's already given us the solutions. We need people to execute the plan that he's given to us.
Oh, praise due to Allah. And people showing you love. Can't wait to put this on YouTube. This is our last question for you. I also wanted to say thank you for saying, to the judgment, because you spoke about Spanish. And Spanish, I'm in college right now, and out of all the classes I have outside of chemistry, Spanish is the hardest one for me. And every time I tell somebody, I watch Telemundo. I love Narcos. I'm like, it's hard for me to conjugate verbs. I can tell you what it is. I can tell you history. Yep. I can tell you I-Tech, media, whatever, biology, whatever. But Spanish is conjugating verbs is the hardest thing I've had to do in college. And people are like, I conjugate verbs in my sleeps. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, I mean, I can't. It's a trial for me. I'm just telling y'all.
And the conjugating is hard. That is hard. The conjugate, people don't realize that is a difficult thing to learn, the conjugation, because it doesn't really exist in English.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's very difficult concept, and it's not like one rule for everything.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what people don't understand. It's tricky. It's tricky.
Listen, vosotros, nosotros.
Exactly.
I don't know what's going on. All right, my last question for you, our student minister Abel, is what would you like your legacy to be, sir?
Oh, that's a good one. I had thought about this when COVID started. Me and somebody, I can't remember who now, we're talking about legacy. And ultimately, the only thing I would hope that I'd leave is inspiration for somebody, whoever were to come next, or whoever, not just an individual, but I mean, whoever in terms of a people come next, to know that, this isn't going to be the beginning of something, it's the continuation of something. Just like I look at those from the 50s and 60s, the Mexican brothers that were in LA, Chicago, Texas, Milwaukee, New York, in different parts, that we don't necessarily even know their names, but they were there. I see their photos sometimes, and we're trying to figure out who they are. And just to know that they were already seeds, gives me inspiration, so that if potentially I could leave inspiration for others to say that, okay, we got somebody that was doing work here, that did this, that did that, that connected these dots for us already, that clarified things that we weren't sure about, and they can take it to the next level. That would be the best that I could hope for from Allah. And I know He never wastes the work of a worker, so all I can do is work, and inshallah, He'll allow that work to mean something, not just to my children, my immediate family, but whatever comes after, that I could be, inshallah, a branch or a leaf on the branch of Islam, would be the greatest, honor of my life, to know that I served the Messiah, served the Mahdi, served Allah, and gave the best that I could, not necessarily perfect, but the best that I could, and got better, and tried to give the best and make the best better each time that I could. And that if it would be accepted by them and potentially used as inspiration and possibly even instruction for others to come, then I would feel at peace, knowing that, Allah blessed me to live a life that was of value, not because of something personal, like things that I have, or even my family, even though I love my family, but because whatever I did would live beyond me and potentially mean something to somebody in the future. That would be, to me, the greatest honor that I could have, to know that Allah is pleased and that my work meant something to the upward move of our people.
Due to Allah. And on that amazing note, I want to thank you again Student Minister Abel Muhammad, taking time out of your busy schedule. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for watching.